Rock bottle on the track, boy.
Seriously? Dave!
Water damage?
Good day, my friends. Hello. Thank you for being here so very much. This is a truly special show. I really appreciate you guys for being here. Welcome to another episode of Book of Killian here on YouTube, Killian Weeks. I am your host. Yes, indeed. We're going to be chatting with Chris, my architectural observer friend down in the States. Sonny, my friend, thank you so very much for being here. I appreciate you over there in Australia. Holla. Actually, Sonny, since you're here, I don't know, I wanted to ask you, since you're here live, did you happen to catch that video I posted off of the Bass Strait with the big ship, the cruiser? I was curious to know about your thoughts on that, with the whole boundary aspect of things, and what your headspace was on that. Anyways, without further ado, I'm gonna connect with my friend Chris. We're gonna patch him through here on the awesomeness of Discord. Get him on a voice call. Chris. Bear with me. All right, where do I find you? There you go, voice call. Let me see if I'm gonna get him.
Test, test.
Hello, 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 my friend. What's happening, Chris? How are you, sir?
Pretty good.
Thank you so very much for being here. Really appreciate you.
Sorry, I was listening in.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I'm gonna actually just roll the architectural video I have loaded up for just for some eye entertainment as you and I chat. But yeah, if you could be with me here on the Discord as well, that'd be great because then we can kind of synergize in terms of visual and obviously audio. That'd be great. How have you been? Where are you located?
Pretty good. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. Love it here. Born and raised. Except it gets pretty hot.
Yeah,
It's all right.
what's your temperature like today?
We're looking at probably a high of, they say, 101, and then it's kind of funny. It says it feels dangerous outside at 108.
Holy
So,
shit.
yeah, it's pretty dangerous out there. It's
That's
dangerous.
insane. So yeah, I gotta share. Okay, so I think just before we went live, Rect dropped in to say good morning. So I'm gonna share this link with him because he literally was just talking about how damn well hot it is.
Oh yeah, he shared. What was it? He was in that
The
that
attic space.
It was like
Yeah.
136.9 or something. Dude, get out of
Insanity.
there.
Yeah, run for the hills. That ain't right. That ain't right. So what do you do?
So I do a lot of stuff, just because I like to. I teach at a community college. I teach architecture, so I get to talk about perspective and honestly the earth. I throw it in there. I do architecture work for other architects that are around town.
Okay.
And then I started my own design consulting firm, basically. Is a base, I guess the best legal way I could put it.
Right.
To just consult on anything design, whether it's products for a kitchen and handheld utensils and building stuff in Rhino and 3D printing, or designing somebody's house, usually.
Okay.
Right now, just because the market here is at least expanding pretty exponentially. But it's I don't know, good life.
So from a standpoint of your observations with respects to obviously you've got your hands in all kinds of cookie jars within the same obviously big batch of architecture, but many different pots, right? Which is like you're teaching and you're also a student, which is amazing because you're passing that energy through, which is an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, always a student, for sure.
Right, student of the game, so to speak, right? Student of what you're taking in.
Spiritually, in life, and then of course academically. Yeah.
Right. So, from a standpoint of what you're witnessing within the realm of architecture, are you seeing a shift, especially? Well, I don't even need to talk about the aspect of what we just went through, but are you noticing a shift in what people are wanting in terms of downsize, or are you like, what's your opinion on that?
They are kind of downsizing, but usually that's what happens when price of stuff goes up. They usually want something of a small gem rather than a gigantic thing that they can't maintain. It's not
Right.
sustainable. So yeah, at least in terms of residential design, people are, they're going for that 3,000 square foot house rather than the 5,000 square foot. And I would say most of my clientele are
A gigantic thing they can't maintain.
they're much more high end, right? They're the ones kind of making $1 million a year, which is interesting to understand that aspect of society as well. Because I would definitely say I'm not. I'm definitely maybe middle class or lower middle class, but working the way up.
Yeah, no, I mean, buddy, that's trust me, it's I mean, the aspect of the class society that we've kind of taken over is a whole another aspect of the discussion.
when people talk about architecture, usually that's thrown right in there. Economics and of course money-driven um, forms, if you will, especially in the modern era, I'd say, of architecture. Whereas, we look at some of this old architecture and it doesn't seem like money was an object.
Right. Interesting points. From a standpoint of looking at the tiny house movement as an example,
Oh, right.
have you paid attention to that?
Yeah, there's actually this guy called Tiny Texas Houses. Um, he's a really open-minded dude. I don't know if he's a flat earther or anything, but
Right.
I wouldn't doubt it. He actually restores, some of those old houses. I don't know if you've been to Texas, but if you ever are just out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, there's sometimes these abandoned, completely wood sheds, if you will,
Mm.
with old doors, old windows that have been busted, roofs that have been caved in. But he takes all these pieces and he makes these tiny homes out of them.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that he started the movement or anything, but I saw him pick up a lot of success, and it got into the architecture magazines, if you will. Definitely spread news academically. I don't think a lot of people picked up on it just because I would say the upper class doesn't really want to live in a confined space. However, I would say, with this kind of 2020 general awakening, I don't want to call it like a spiritual awakening or anything, but it's just like, I think a lot of people have kind of taken a step back and like, hey, what am I doing, or at least what do I really want with life, and why am I here? And starting to ask those questions.
A reassessment.
And architecturally, where you live starts to be part of that question, right?
Hmm. Well
What kind
stated.
of resources you take from this earth, and how you want to take them, and how you want to get back to it, is a really important, sometimes really hard thing to do, to ask yourself those things, because we're not taught them, and in fact, we're taught the opposite.
Interesting you say that. I that's one of the things that I really I realized when I was coming up as a child. I wasn't really taught the aspect of finances, right? The idea of saving and how it works, and to be cognizant and all these different things. So I totally get that when you say an aspect. We were very much taught to embrace the ego versus which is like the materialistic aspect of things, versus the self-servant things in life.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Love it. So I actually paused it. I think you've probably caught up now on the YouTube slide. I was looking at this a couple minutes in prior to airing, and I thought to myself, look how lineal everything is in this picture.
Oh, right.
Right? Like, yeah, I think about the aspect of, even if there was an aspect of, okay, there was a curve introduced, that would not work. Right?
I'm totally not gonna lie. I'm lost in the video. I had to pause.
It's okay. Yeah, no, I paused it on purpose. Oh, you paused the YouTube video?
Yeah, from the very beginning, I didn't.
Oh, it's okay, dude. If you just flip it to live, it'll show live, and you'll be active where we're at. No stress.
Nice.
So I started thinking about, well, maybe
Sweet.
would they have made like facets, right? Like carving flat pieces into this area as they bermed it to ensure that it was all flat. But
Oh, right.
like, you look at these buildings and you can literally, they're all on the parallel, right? On the vertical, they're all parallel.
Every time, dude. And that's what even that Gary building, or Gary-ish looking building next to it. Um, that's where they start to break those boundaries of the orthogonal straight edge. But you were asking me earlier, like, what brought me to flat Earth, and I would answer again. It was some of my architecture classes. Now, I didn't really have a professor that was a flat earther, or at least I don't think I did. But they would ask us to study all these lines, all this architecture, with the sun and the moon.
Right.
And it was 2012 also, so I was already kind of looking into the Mayan calendar. I was already skeptic about 911,
Right.
those buildings, again, architecture, and why, that was another good question, why you couldn't ask that in architecture school, right?
Right.
As soon as you asked any professor, they're, oh, no, it just completely shut down the conversation. But yeah, architecture definitely led me to seeing that true flat horizon, because we all see it, and I was completely a NASA fanboy. I wanted to go to the stars. I wanted to be an astronaut, an inventor. I still want to be an inventor, and would still claim that I try to be. But damn, like it's an amazing field to get into for sure, and I think everybody kind of has a secret hobby for understanding these buildings too, which is why it's just so liked. In that way.
Well, so I started thinking back, because again, you kind of get to the end of one, I guess, not journey, but one end of one road or path. You put down your bags and you look back. And I looked back and thought back to 95 when I was sitting in grade 10 in drafting class. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do this with the rest of my life. And I looked around the room, sat at the drafting desk, and I'm like, yep, this is it. And from there, obviously unpacked the whole architecture and drafting and learned and everything else. But from a standpoint of actually stepping back, because I feel like I was immersed in architecture, I never took the time to actually step back and think to myself, is the world round?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there comes that moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because especially like with the amount of CGI, like, because I liked all those photos of the satellites. They're cool. They're really well rendered, and things like that. And it never dawned to me. Even the renders I was making in school were just like these renders, or at least was starting to put two and two together. Now, I was really fortunate in that when I was in architecture school, I was already kind of going through the motions of flat Earth. So like I was already questioning, like, yeah, I don't feel movement. Like I'm starting to trust my senses more. We were starting to study particularly violet light, like the 18 degrees to 0 degree angle of light, and having time lapse of the sun and moon. And I was doing flat Earth research and I didn't even know it.
Wow.
And then,
what year were you in school?
Came on the scene too. Yeah, I was in school.
What year were you in school though?
What totally from 2009 to 2015.
Okay, gotcha. So what, you're early 30s now, mid 30s?
Yeah, mid 30s.
Okay, cool, gotcha. So I'm 42, so 7. It just gives me an idea in terms of like what you learned, what I learned, and the evolution and such.
Yeah, for sure.
Like hand drafting and things like that.
Yeah, hand. That's what we still teach too. We're one of the only community colleges that still teaches
Shut up.
hand drafting. Yeah.
I went to Sheridan College, which is the equivalent here in Canada of a community college, because I enjoyed the technical aspect of it. Right, I enjoy figuring out how to put things together versus the theory crafting. Yep.
When those two things link, because I was somebody, when I grew up, I could never draw. My brother was the one who could draw like Super Saiyans and Dragon Ball Z, and I couldn't draw anything. And it wasn't until I went to that college that I teach at now,
right?
Where we learned hand drafting and all this stuff and geometry, that I was just like, wow, I can do it.
That's amazing.
And it gave me those skills. I perfected those skills, but
Right.
What an eye opener.
Well, I go back to, we've had, to obviously bring the 247 24/7 group into the discussion. It's not until I sat down and actually started chatting with you guys that I realized the whole deal of perspective and how important perspective is. And the fact that, like, well, but I mean, we get the advantage being in architecture where we actually get to label perspective and understand that it's the z-axis, right? And that z-axis is the axis that 90% of people miss.
Yeah.
Right.
Simple as that.
You've got the XY that happens, obviously, which gives our 2 dimensions. And then I look at, I think about science and what they've done within the aspect of rationalizing everything down to a 2D perspective, if you will. Describe everything on paper. But descriptions can only take you so far. They can't illustrate like what's literally coming out at you, which is that what we totally miss.
I often say, even when I'm teaching elevations, that the elevation view is actually completely illusion. It doesn't exist.
100%.
Can't see an elevation of any object. It's a projected view, and some people are like, "What do you mean?" And they don't even disconnect those.
Yeah, the concept, but again, I mean, when you're drawing CAD, you're drawing everything based on construction lines, right? You draw all your construction lines accordingly when you're laying out your elevations, and then you lay your datums.
To be accurate.
Yeah, and you just start carving up the cookie after that. Yeah, I totally feel you, man, because you end up like literally tracing the elevation off of the floor plan based on the projected lines. But the projected lines are always taken at a 90-degree angle off of the view plane and put to your eyeball, which in the real world, you don't get to view every single angle or every single line from a 90-degree projected viewpoint. Right? Bro, this is crazy. I love it. The fact that you explain this stuff, and that's what I do at work. I review elevations I'll do limiting distance calculations to make sure that the glazed area isn't over the allowable based on how close to
that allowance.
Right?
They got their rules.
Yeah. So we have generally here in Ontario, we do a lot of 4-foot building. So you've got the property line, 1.2 meters or 4 feet off of the property lines. You start your construction line or your construction plane, and they'll allow you to have 7 to 8% of that glazed or of that face as glazed opening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Okay.
We've got different rules like that.
Yeah.
In residential and stuff.
That's crazy. I love it.
I just think it's always funny that somebody's like, you know what, we should limit how much glass we can use. Instead of just being open about it and kind of about design. But I mean, that brings me to something I'd ask you about architecture. You're familiar with form follows function, right?
My guy. I explained this to somebody about their sunglasses the other day.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. And it makes a lot of sense for most objects, right? In practicality, and even artistically.
Right.
When you're trying to explain artistic, I think, emotions and forms in that way. Kind of like the bridge that you have right there. I mean, gosh, what a beautiful form. That isn't orthogonal lines, but it's made up of actually a lot of them. Anyway.
No, I pulled it back. I'll catch up. But yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
No, you're saying about the bridge octagonal lines, like form follows function, function follows form. Like you have to identify which is going to come first in the design that you're attempting to achieve, so that you don't get caught up in insanity, really.
Right, and we kind of do it for a design aspect. Like right now, that's kind of just the form. It's kind of just the shell's not really doing anything except maybe protecting the traffic or circulation that's underneath. But what's interesting is when you start looking at really old architecture, because it is absolutely different. And then there's even a point in time where we just stopped doing it, right? Or at least at the scale and intricate work. They would say ornamentation, right? And the architectural story, at least in academia, states that we basically just got too tired of it. It became too money consuming. It became, honestly, seen as like royalty, even explained in like Le Corbusier, where he basically wanted to throw the royal carriage off the cliff, basically, saying that ornament should die, right? And that's why we have these clear, crisp, orthogonal buildings. Like a lot of people go, well, it's just because those are cheaper. That's not really true. It is also that, of course, here in America, but it's also this ideology that came out of the 1920s, right? A lot of things shifted, I think, in the 1920s. Arguably, I can really, I guess, speak to architecture in that sense, but it is pretty crazy when you look at the skyscraper, and how we had some skyscrapers in San Francisco at times where we shouldn't. You know, and I've only really gotten to the whole mud flood thing, honestly, within the year.
Right.
So I haven't given it too much research, and even the things that I do see, honestly, there's these two Australian girls who do a bunch of mud flood work, and just looking at Australian architecture, I think they're both architecture majors. You'd really like them.
Right.
I think they're called Tartarian Truthers.
Okay.
But gosh, when you look at form follows function and you apply that same principle to this ancient paradigm, at least in the architecture that's left over, and especially when you look at World War I and World War II, about the architecture that they destroyed in some of the most remote places too, as if they were destroying technology. Honestly, a lot of star forts.
Right.
It gets really weird when you start looking at the infrastructure of architecture, especially in the ancient. And I mean, again, I'm not there. I would never make any claims, and it's kind of just all speculation. But of course, Flat Earth was part of that journey too. So I get the same feeling that something's there. That of course these are not forts. They were protecting nothing from the water. You know, it's almost laughable.
Right.
And yet that's what academia says, and I'm very used to that. So I'm very used to this, what I would call dualistic view. There's this professional view in architecture, and there's definitely this academic view that's more theoretical. Just as much as physics, there's theoretical physics and there's experimental physics, and obviously which one works pretty well is goes without saying. But yeah.
Well, it's when they told them to design an airplane, they say design it as if it's on a flat plane, stationary.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I laugh is just because, like, it's amazing that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think tons of people are waking up, and it's finally becoming this topic. But even myself, in 2014, I lost a lot of friends bringing up the topic, even in my other architecture studios, because I was pretty vocal about it. I wouldn't say I was a star student or anything, but you know, my designs were talked about, and so you know, people looked up to me in a way to where I talk about flat Earth, and they were just like, "Oh man, you're an idiot!" Like, and you know, to the family, and you know, I think every flat earther kind of experiences this too, in some degree, right? Somebody they cared about, you know, they bring this information and they suddenly don't care. You know, it's hard, especially when it was tied to something so true to me like architecture.
Quick thing, could you bump your volume up just a little bit on your input?
Sure.
Just got a quick little comment that your voice is a little low. Appreciate it, man.
Pretty low.
No, it's okay, dude. Trust me, in architecture, you tend to take on the mumble. I do the same stuff, believe me. People like, you talk too fast and you mumble. I'm like, look, man, I got a lot of stuff I need to get off my chest. Sorry, go on, Chris. You're doing an amazing job.
Sensitivity. Hopefully that will help.
Oh yeah, you're great, dude. It's perfect. I can hear. Yeah, your background's picked up a ton. That's awesome.
But yeah, you know, kind of the reason I don't talk much on at least the 24/7, and they're a remarkable group. I can't say that enough. I know you kind of just, you were saying, kind of came in a little early, or recently, I should say.
Yep.
I probably joined the server, I think, late 2020, maybe summer.
Wow,
2020.
that's awesome.
And they're just a blast. An entire spectrum of people, such diversity. It's a community. I mean, what else can you say of it's funny, as much as we all disagree on stuff, we all agree on that one great thing, and that we're not on a spinning ball.
Yeah, that
And
and I
that's what makes it so powerful, you know.
well, I had it. I don't know if you. I teed off on somebody last night, and I tend to get righteous every once in a while. But he was basically just saying something to the effect that we just sit around and talk about flat Earth all day, and I quickly dimed in and had to say that we're just holding the line right now. We're holding that light for people to know that the stability is there. We haven't gone anywhere. And it's coming very, very soon. And that's the main thing to me. I mean, like, Noah swung that hammer for 120 years and people laughed and scoffed and whatever, but he still made it out there. I think these are the times, days with Noah, right? You got to hold that line and hold that truth no matter what.
Yeah, and it's kind of this library. I mean, this server too, of just information. Um, it's I like that you make the term hold the line too, because for a while, especially with nobody else around me, I was researching this stuff, and it wasn't until I saw Eric Dubay's, of course, 200 proofs that led to some of the other authors in Flat Earth and even being aware of those. But having no other physical humans around to talk to about it you kind of went on the fence back and forth, questioning yourself rather than having that buddy to go, hey, I'm questioning it too. So, I mean, I think that's why it's become so successful today in 2022, because people are, I don't know, some people I think are even caring more about each other in that regard, even though I think some of us in this community are just fed up with Globers too.
Mm,
It's almost like, why aren't you all flat earthers?
yeah.
Which is why I laugh sometimes, like maybe that's why it's dead in here, because we're just all flat earthers now. We
Yeah.
won. It's
Well,
over.
from a standpoint of, let me think here, the being collected under one umbrella, and that umbrella being, as you say, the truth, because we're just again speaking what is important to us. When you unite under that umbrella, it brings such a level of calmness to the water, because everybody's there for the same motivation, right? And literally just caring about one another.
There's
The
more in the silence.
Yeah, the thing that the thing that infuriates me is how science shames people from, oh, you don't know this, you should know this, and so on and so forth. And then I look at the complete, literally yin and yang. I look at the weight of this, and how the flat Earth guys are so riddled with love and light that we're just literally, you can hear our inner voices just talking to people, saying, do you realize this, do you see this, and whatever else. The place of positivity is what I'm enjoying. the
Absolutely.
the one thing, and as I say, I'll be the first guy to get righteous with a Glober. And it's from a standpoint of ignorance, right? It's ignorance that's what infuriates me. It's
Right.
it's the attempt to pervert what I see and feel in my heart to try to tell me that my heart is different. That's when I'm like, bro, we got a problem.
Right. Well, I mean, that's why I think people like, what's his name, Matthew, is so interesting in the server, because it's clearly gatekeeping, and it clearly shows that line that you're talking about, that needs to be withheld, because there's obviously some sort of resource here, constantly here, making a fool of himself. I mean, definitely to us, and hopefully to other audience as well. But it goes to show, like, either how crazy the state of this front line is, or um, also how manipulated it could be with shills, and there's kind of all that talk, um, and people are always kind of skeptical, especially, flat earthers. I would say we're not trying to be rude. But yeah, there's a lot of people who come through that are just absolute clowns in the best way put. Where, gosh, you're really questioning the intention of, the power of this community, and maybe that's what it is. This community is powerful, and they feel like, there's got to be this different disinformation involved to sort of muddy the waters, and that's clear on YouTube. That's clear on a lot of, of course, places. But I would say the moderators do a really good, well job of keeping that out and asking the right questions. And honestly, there's a lot of great conversations. I would say the positive definitely outweighs the bad, for sure.
The
And that's just
teaching,
the kind of guy I am.
the teaching, right? The you can never, when a man is teaching, you can hear in his voice, again, with like just like yourself, when it's making sense. The ideas that they're presenting, and it's I've learned so much. The idea of gas needing a container, right? Your car would be
Gosh,
that alone.
I
That
will never forget that video of the train sort of canister, like in a vacuum, and then I guess they puncture a hole, and the whole thing just instantly crushes like a can. And it's like, yeah, there it is. There's vacuum. That's the power.
yeah,
You're telling me that's next to nothing?
yeah,
Good luck.
yeah,
I mean, that's just common sense.
yeah. There
You
it's
have to be to know that.
yeah. That's that blows my skull. It blows my mind that at some point in time you ask that one question, and does gas need a container? Do you observe movement? And those two things, it feels like a solid pedestal or a solid platform to start building from. Maybe we're just looking for the third one, but yeah, not witnessing
it's pretty
movement.
solid.
Yeah, and gas needing a container. I'm thinking, man, what would be your third proof to that?
And water remains level.
Ooh, yeah, water always seeks its level. Water
Gosh,
always
I
seeks
mean-
its level. I love it. Well, Chris, it's been an absolute slice. We've been chatting for 40 minutes. We've covered quite a
been
bit.
great.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time. I think at some point in time we'll connect via private message and throw another subject on the wall for some consideration and throw it around. I know you'd mentioned the mud floods and Tartaria to start exploring that. That is quite an in-depth subject.
It really is. Especially when, honestly, I don't see it as the cultural aspect. I know there is kind of this, they're trying to answer the why so fast. To me, I just want to study the object, and in this case, it's architecture.
Right.
And I even have an academic standpoint of this architecture and what they say. They say it's established, and they say a lot of great things about this architecture. And they don't actually give the why. So I think that's where that speculation maybe comes in.
Right.
But when you start understanding the measurements, right? And again, it's kind of like understanding Earth. You got to measure it. You got to ask some questions, right? Why is there a face looking this way to the east, and there's this kind of face looking to the west? And that's kind of strange. Yeah, they do all have domes that resonate for some reason. And when you record their silence and from this guy, they even resonate certain patterns, and that's pretty interesting. And I was even able to go test those things, and it's pretty grand. There's even some in Texas where I found sunken buildings. Started really. I mean, I would say I'm on the tip of the edge of even diving in just because I'm so busy. But it's definitely that hobby it's coming along.
Interesting. And it's funny, I mentioned Texas yesterday. I was talking to a coworker, and yeah, I'm like, so they're thinking about moving to Texas. Just some people we were chatting about, but it's interesting. You would be from Texas today. I would meet with you, and you would be from Texas. I love that kind of stuff. Appreciate you, man. All right, my guy. It's been a slice.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, it's been an absolute pleasure. Trust me, meeting another a fellow architectural observer on this journey of life is an amazing place to be. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to keep this uploaded on the channel because it was just nice to sit down and chat with you.
I like the concept, man. That's great.
Yeah, well, I figure Book of Killian. I'm writing in my book about all of my experiences, and I think what better thing can you do than share your journey with your fellow man and try to highlight what they're doing on their journey as well. I think it helps to kind of connect everything in a big connection.
Well said, man.
Have a wonderful day, man. Take care.
You too.
All right, brother. Bye.
Peace.
Friends, I am logging off. Thank you so very much for being here. We had the absolute pleasure of chatting with Chris down in Texas. Appreciate you, Chris. Thanks for the chat, man. A nice little introductory, exploratory chat between two fine gentlemen, as I compliment myself and you, of course. Sitting down to discuss architecture is always a fun thing. But yeah, we'll throw out another idea for consideration at another point in time and connect with the family in the very near future, my friends. Thanks for being here. Love you lots. Bye-bye.